Super God Gene, Chapter 36. Yuan, you can let us go, but according to our contract, this is a breach. You will have to pay us the rest of the money, sneered Lu Feng. Just go. Yuan threw a few stacks of money at them and didn't look at them again. Lu Feng and the rest picked up the money. Although they were angry, they didn't dare to harm the clients because they knew who these young clients were. They gazed at Han Sen and said, "Misters, we are far from the shelter, so please be careful, as you are trusting someone unreliable." "He is 100 times more reliable than you," Yuan replied. The hired ones didn't dare to express their anger in front of Yuan, so they just left. "Ass, your arrow was so powerful," commended Qing after the rest were chased away. He didn't want to call Han Sen ass freak but awkwardly discovered that he didn't know his name. His rating must have reached 7.0 to use Doomsday. "Of course it was powerful," said Yuan. 7.0, but they said that he. Qing and the other clients looked at Han Sen and his bow, unconvinced. After all, the story of Ass Freak was so well known that even they knew about it. I mean at least 7.0. He shot so many arrows in practice, and if his strength hadn't reached 8.0, it would certainly not be so easy for him, Yuan said, looking at Han Sen. 8.0. They were even more surprised and kept looking at Han Sen as if they hadn't seen him before. Anyone with an 8.0 rating would be rather advanced in First God's Sanctuary, so they couldn't believe Ass Freak would be so strong. "Let me try your bow." One client still didn't believe Yuan's words. Han Sen smiled and handed Doomsday to him. The young client held it with both hands and tried to pull the string, but the string didn't even move. He tried a few times more and still failed to draw the string. Although they graduated from top schools and had practiced hyper-geno arts as kids, their bodies hadn't been modified by geno points, so their strength could reach 3.5 at best, which was far below the requirement to use Doomsday. "You are so weak. Let me." Another client could not stand to watch and grabbed the bow. He too had failed after a few tries. Everyone gave it a shot except for Yuan, and none could draw the string. Only then had they felt impressed by Han Sen. Archery was practiced by very few people and required a lot of effort. So most people didn't know much about bows and arrows, let alone how good Doomsday was. For example, Han Hao and his friends had no idea that Han Sen's bow was worth millions, or they wouldn't have ridiculed him like that. The clients stopped underestimating Han Sen, not least because Han Sen also had saved Qing's life. They asked his name and called him Sen from then on. After all, God's Sanctuary was a world where only the strong were respected, and Han Sen's archery and strength were truly impressive. "Sen, would you show us real archery skills?" Qing proposed. All the other clients looked at Han Sen with great anticipation. "My archery skills are just ordinary," Hansen laughed. "Don't be modest. When one is being too modest, one is actually proud," Qing said. "Okay, I will try to shoot then." Han Sen also itched to exercise his skills. Since he received Doomsday, he hadn't tested its limits yet. The clients were overjoyed. Han Sen looked around and walked to a hillside. He aimed at something and slowly drew a saber arrow. As he drew the string, blue and swollen veins popped on his arms. The arrow left the string in the blink of an eye and disappeared in the woods. Did he miss? Qing and others didn't hear any prey being hit and thought he had missed. "It is too far away. The woods must be at least 400 yards from here. It is understandable to miss," said Qing. "Come on, let's go and find out," Han Sen said and walked down the hill into the woods. The clients followed with suspicion. 100 meters into the woods, they saw a spotted beast nailed on a tree with an arrow through its head. "No wonder we did not hear a thing." The arrow directly destroyed the nerves of the spotted beast and it didn't even have time to shriek. Everyone was so impressed. It was at least 400 yards from where Han Sen had been standing, and the beast was killed with just one shot. Han Sen's archery must be among the best in First God's Sanctuary. After that, all the clients worshipped Hansen and did everything he said. Han Sen protected them for half a month and received 150,000 in cash. The clients wanted to sign a long-term contract with Han Sen, but he declined. He was only short of money at the moment. In the long run, he still needed to focus on his own evolution. Han Sen returned to Steel Armor Shelter alone and was stopped by those who had been chased away by Yuan at the gate. These men were led by Lu Feng, and Han Hao was also among them. "Ass Freak, you have really pissed me off. How can you make it up to me?" asked Lu Feng, cracking his knuckles while slowly approaching Han Sen. Super God Gene, Chapter 37. A crowd of spectators started to gather. They were used to seeing Han Sen getting bullied. How do you want me to compensate you? Said Han Sen calmly, watching Lu Feng approaching him. Let me kick your ass, Lu Feng said, throwing a punch at Han Sen's face. Lu Feng's punch was fierce and fast. If Han Sen was hit, his nose would be smashed. When everyone was thinking that he would suffer, Han Sen leaned his body and dodged the punch. Meanwhile, he tripped Lu Feng with his leg and made him fall on his face. Lu Feng fell so hard that his nose was bleeding and his eyes were watering. Burning with anger, he drew his alpha alloy broadsword from the sheath and slashed it toward Han Sen. Little scum, how dare you resist? I'll kill you. Han Hao had mixed feelings watching this. Although he despised Han Sen was still his cousin, and Han Hao felt terrible watching him being bullied and perhaps getting killed. But if he helped Han Sen and people knew him to be the cousin of Ass Freak, how could he stay at Steel Armor Shelter? Having hesitated for a while, Han Hao turned his face to the side, deliberately avoid seeing Han Sen. Han Hao thought that he would immediately hear Han Sen's screams, but the screams he heard were not from Han Sen, but from Lu Feng. Han Hao quickly turned to see what had happened and couldn't believe his own eyes. Lu Feng's alpha alloy broadsword was now in Han Sen's hand and Lu Feng himself was pinned to the ground with his arm twisted behind himself, screaming while too scared to struggle. Han Hao did not see how it happened, but others all saw clearly. They were so surprised that they stood there with their mouths wide open. When Lu Feng slashed his broadsword at Han Sen, everyone thought Ass Freak was doomed. But as soon as Lu Feng wielded the alpha alloy broadsword, Han Sen grabbed his hand and twisted, bringing Lu Feng to his knees. Han Sen then knocked his back with a knee and held him down to the floor. No one could believe that Ass Freak would have such fine movements and were all in a daze. There was no sound except for Lu Feng's screams. What are you doing? Kill this bastard. Ouch! Lu Feng shouted to the onlookers while screaming. Crack! His arm was broken by Han Sen before he could even finish the sentence. Covered in cold sweat, Lu Feng was deathly pale. Lu Feng's friends saw this and rushed to Han Sen, raising their weapons. Han Sen was still holding Lu Feng's alpha alloy broadsword in his hand, and used it to block the first alloy weapon swung at him. To his surprise, the weapon was cut in half by Lu Feng's broadsword instantaneously. This dumbass had a really nice alpha alloy broadsword. It's at least worth 1 or 2 million, Han Sen thought and decided not to give it back. In a short while, all the other weapons were cut off by Han Sen, and their owners were scared off. No one dared to attack Han Sen anymore. Han Hao was stunned, almost thinking he was in a dream. Lu Feng had a strength rating of 6.7 and a nice weapon, so he enjoyed quite a lot of attention in Steel Armor Shelter. Although Han Hao had a mutant beast soul weapon, he knew he could not match Lu Feng. All of a sudden, Lu Feng became the one lying on the floor without his weapon, while Han Sen became the winner. The change was so drastic that Han Hao couldn't process it. Hadn't he been isolated by both Qin Zan and Son of Heaven since he entered the shelter? Didn't he fail to hunt even a primitive creature? Didn't he? Han Hao looked at Han Sen blankly, with a variety of complex emotions entangled in his mind. Han Sen did not continue the fight with the rest, but went back to take Lu Feng's sheath away, hung the sheath on his own belt, and returned his new broadsword to his new sheath. The next time you want compensation, just come to me, said Han Sen as he strode toward the gate of Steel Armor Shelter. The onlookers all looked at him as if it was the first time they saw him. Stop! Someone approached riding a beast soul mount when Han Sen was about to enter the gate. It was Luo Tianyang, Son of Heaven's henchman. Luo, Ass Freak broke my arm and seized my broadsword. You have to avenge me, shouted Lu Feng in delight at the sight of Luo Tianyang. Douchebag. Luo Tianyang first glanced at Lu Feng and then at Han Sen. I was wondering who was so daring to hurt my guy. So, it was you, scum. Luo Tianyang took out his alloy whip, and whacked it at Han Sen. Han Sen paused and wielded his broadsword at the whip. When the two weapons collided, Han Sen and Luo Tianyang both shuddered. Luo Tianyang suddenly shouted, how come you have such strength? Luo Tianyang's own strength rating had reached 9.6. Although with this whack he did not use all his strength, Han Sen must have had at least an 8.0 rating to be able to block his whip, which he could not believe. Super God Gene. Chapter 38. This person must die. Luo Tianyang suddenly had an urge to kill Han Sen and was about to raise his whip again. When he looked at Han Sen, however, he stopped and his whole body became tense. Han Sen had put away the broadsword and held Doomsday in his hands. Drawing the string to the fullest, he pointed the arrowhead at Luo Tianyang. Although Luo Tianyang did not recognize Doomsday, thanks to his rich experience of fighting, he could smell danger from Han Sen and his bow and stayed completely still. The two were into a deadlock. Luo Tianyang did not dare to move, and Han Sen did not have the confidence to kill Luo Tianyang with only one shot. Even time seemed to stand still. The onlookers were completely shocked. When Han Sen beat Lu Feng and his friends, they simply couldn't believe it, and now he was even well matched with Luo Tianyang. Luo Tianyang was one of Son of Heaven's henchmen, his strength rating was near 10.0, and even he didn't dare to move with Han Sen's arrow pointed at him. Anyone with a strength rating of more than 9.0 would be among the top 100 in steel armor shelter, where there were more than 100,000 people. That someone like this could be scared by Han Sen was an overwhelming fact to all. No one knew how Han Sen could gain such strength when isolated by both Qinzan and Son of Heaven. Han Sen, put down your bow, said Qinzan, leading her gang, who were all riding beast soul mounts. Han Sen put away his bow and arrow. His strength was still weaker than Luo Tianyang, and Han Sen was not sure if he could shoot his opponent when Luo had his guard up. Keeping the posture was consuming his energy very fast, and the deadlock was not good for Han Sen. Miss Qin, I'll kill this bastard for you, said Luo Tianyang, whipping at Han Sen, who had already disarmed himself. Han Sen seemed to be prepared for this and was about to block the whip with Doomsday. Before he acted, a beast soul bronze sword was thrown over and hit the whip. The strength of the throw was so fierce that the whip fell from Luo Tianyang's hand. I will discipline my guy, and you can mind your own business. Qinzan looked at Luo Tianyang coldly and summoned back her sword before she rode into the shelter. Follow me, Qinzan turned back and commanded Han Sen. Han Sen quickly caught up with her and followed her gang into the shelter. The entire steel armor shelter was suddenly in an uproar. Ass Freak beat Lu Feng and his friends, was well matched against Luo Tianyang and was, most importantly, declared by Qinzan to be her guy. All the news had driven everyone mad. No one understood what had happened, it was all guesswork. Did they develop a love affair from the stab? I have to learn from Ass Freak and stab a beautiful and capable woman in the ass. Maybe I can become rich and powerful. Qinzan looks so serious, but she is actually a flirt. Rumors spread across the entire steel armor shelter, and Han Sen was once again put under the spotlight. However, Han Sen's strength was not really the focus. People cared more about whether he was Qinzan's boy toy. Even Qinzan's gang would look at Han Sen weirdly. You know archery? Asked Qinzan after she called Han Sen to a hall. I used to practice, Han Sen shrugged. You can use Doomsday, so you must have worked hard on it, said Qinzan matter-of-factly. You can join Bullseye and follow me in the future. No, Han Sen refused. Qinzan bit her lips and said snappily, you just offended Luo Tianyang. Without my protection, do you suppose he'd let you live? Thank you for your kindness, but I will deal with it myself, Han Sen said indifferently. You should have known who I am. My men are more or less related to the military, and Bullseye belongs to me. Follow me and you will gain great advantages when applying for military schools. Qinzan suppressed her anger and said to Han Sen. I never wanted to go to a military school. Han Sen knew that he could apply to a military school for further education after he finished integrated compulsory education. However, all military schools had high requirements of fitness. If one's fitness index was below 10 before the first evolution, one had no chance at military schools. For Han Sen, to reach 10 in the fitness index was not hard, but he wasn't interested in going to school at all. He'd rather put more effort into hunting. Exasperated, Qinzan said, without education from military school and an aristocratic title, you could only be an ordinary soldier when you are of age to serve. Only through a military school can you become something in the army. At least by then you wouldn't have been sacrificed. Super God Gene, Chapter 39, let's talk about this another time. I have to go now, and thank you so much for all your help. I'll buy you dinner sometime, said Han Sen, ready to go back. He knew that what Qinzan said made sense, but he had his own plan. He wanted to get an aristocratic title before he turned 20 and went to serve, because aristocrats had certain privileges in the army and would not be sent to the front. Stop, have I excused you? Qinzan stared at Han Sen fiercely. Station master, please, that's not my thing, said Han Sen bitterly. It's fine if you don't want to go. Qinzan suddenly smiled at Han Sen and said, if you do not go, each time you enter the teleport station, I will fight you. Looking at her evil smile, Han Sen's heart sank. He knew that Qinzan hadn't tried her best at all when fighting with him in the past, because he was no match for her at the moment. Judging from her expression, he knew if he declined, he would really have a hard time in the future. I'll just join Bullseye then, Han Sen said, depressed. Chin-zon snapped at Han Sen, do you have any idea how many people in Steel Armor Shelter want to join my gang? And you just acted like I've asked you to take poison. Freedom is priceless, and to lose my freedom is exactly like taking poison, Han Sen sighed. Then you could die a slow death. Even if you died and became a ghost, you'd still be my ghost, Chin-zon pouted and said. Han Sen knew that Chin-zon had made up her mind, and he accepted the offer unwillingly. Feeling dejected, he left the hall. Chin-zon watched him go and was very pleased by his upset look for some strange reason. She couldn't help but smile. Station master, why do you have to recruit such a person to our steel armor gang? He's not worthy of being a member of Bullseye. A woman of the same age as Chin-zon came out from a side door and asked after Han Sen had left. Manly, trust me, although this guy can be a bastard sometimes, he does have great potential in some aspects, Chin-zon told young Manly seriously. Chin-zon had witnessed what a fast learner and diligent student Han Sen was. Repeatedly defeated by her, he didn't go down but grew stronger and stronger. Now even she had to take him seriously. Such progress and mentality were truly amazing. Chin-zon's opinions of Han Sen had improved a great deal, or else she wouldn't have defended him in front of everyone. Han Sen returned to his room and teleported back home before Chin-zon had the chance to leave God's sanctuary. He was not the least interested in going to a military school. Before, it would have been a great option for him, because he could learn hyper-geno arts there. Now, with Jadeskin, he didn't have to waste his time in a military school at all. It would be much wiser for him to spend time hunting and increasing his geno points. As for Bullseye, Han Sen had even less interest in joining. Although as a member of Bullseye he could gain assistance from Chin-zon's information network to improve his chance of finding mutant and sacred blood creatures, he would also have to share the meat hunted with the rest of her team. Han Sen decided to go hunting alone after some preparation. If Chin-zon didn't see him for a while, she would probably forget about the whole thing. Han Sen had wanted to buy an alpha alloy dagger with the 150,000 he had earned, but now he had the broadsword he seized from Lu Feng, so the other was no longer necessary. The broadsword was made of a special alloy with Z metal, which made it very stiff. Its edge could easily cut primitive creatures open. So weapons made from this kind of alloy had always been expensive. Nice. Han Sen touched the edge and his finger was cut immediately. Looking at the shiny edge, Han Sen loved the weapon so much he couldn't put it down. It's worth the price, he thought to himself. The Han family had an alloy business before, and although it was a small factory, they had unique formulas. Their products might not be as good as this broadsword, but could also cut open the skin of some primitive creatures. So the business was quite profitable. If it was not for those terrible family members, their company could surely be among the top 3 on planet Roka. But now the company had been bought by Starry Group. Han Sen was too young back then, and to this day he still didn't quite understand why Starry Group had to acquire their company. He knew his father's death must have had something to do with Starry Group, but he had no ability to find out the truth, so he had to lay low. Son, today I have something important at work. Can you take Yan to school? Luo Sulan knocked on the door and asked Han Sen. School has started already. I did not know that. No worries mom, I'll take her, Han Sen quickly said. School started a few days ago, and you were in God's sanctuary so I didn't want to bother you, said Luo Sulan. Which school is it? Asked Han Sen. It is St. Paul, and I used to the money you left to pay the tuition. Luo Sulan felt slightly uneasy, as she had spent almost all the money on Yan's school. Great, St. Paul is the best on planet Roka except for the posh schools. Han Sen was very happy. He didn't have an aristocratic title for the moment and couldn't send Yan to a posh school, but a good private school is still much better than integrated compulsory education. After chatting with his mother, Han Sen took Han Yan on a maglev train to school. The entrance of St. Paul was almost blocked by private aircrafts, and some of them were deluxe. Almost all rich people without an aristocratic title would send their children to St. Paul. And almost all students here were from affluent families. Walking his sister to school, Han Sen saw a middle-aged fat guy getting off an aircraft with a flirtatious woman on his side and an 8-year-old boy in his arms. He paused, as the middle-aged fat guy happened to be his uncle, Han Lei. Super God Gene, Chapter 40, What are you doing here? Han Lei was surprised to see Han Sen here. Taking Yan to school, replied Han Sen. Yan is coming to St. Paul. Han Lei looked at Han Sen and Han Yan, unconvinced. Since a few days ago. Han Sen said, ready to walk Han Yan into the school gate. Han Lei thought for a while and ran in front of Han Sen. He grabbed Han Sen's wrist and raged, I knew it. My elder brother managed the company for so many years, he must have embezzled lots of money. You were just lying to me about not being able to come up with 2 million, while you are now spending millions to send Yan to St. Paul. I'm telling you, this money belonged to the whole family, just like the house. We must split it, or all. Or what? What can you do about it? Han Sen looked at Han Lei coldly. He was completely disappointed in his relatives and wouldn't give them a cent more. Boy, watch it, I'm your uncle. Han Lei flinched with Han Sen watching him, but he didn't plan to let Han Sen walk free. Uncle, Han Sen smiled dismissively. Well, please go home and review the legal documents we signed and see if you have the right to anything we own. From now on, do not think you can take a penny from us ever again. The reason why Han Sen gave them 2 million so promptly was to draw a line between his relatives and his real family. To get the 2 million, his relatives all signed a document prepared by Mr. Zhang which made it impossible for them to take anything from Han Sen's family in the future. That is fraud. I'll go find your mom right away. How dare you hide money from us, cried Han Lei angrily. Uncle, don't even think about it. I have the right to kill a trespasser. Han Sen looked at Han Lei gloomily. Little brat, how dare. Han Lei threw a punch at Han Sen furiously. With a blank expression, Han Sen grabbed Han Lei's arm and threw Han Lei over his own shoulder. Han Lei shouted out in pain. Uncle, if you want to die, welcome to our house. Han Sen stared at Han Lei coldly. Han Lei opened his eyes wide, as if he didn't know Han Sen. The look on Han Sen's face had terrified him. Han Lei was an evolver, although just by maxing out on primitive geno points. He didn't really do much in Second God's Sanctuary, but he was still an evolver. It was abnormal that Han Sen, who hadn't evolved at all, could give him a shoulder throw easily. His nephew suddenly looked like a different person. Han Sen suddenly smiled and pulled Han Lei up. I'm sure my aunt doesn't know about this woman and child. I think I should talk to her, Han Sen whispered, while Han Lei was still shocked by his sudden change. You think my wife will believe you? Han Lei said madly. That doesn't matter, as long as she believes this. Han Sen showed Han Lei the comlink on his wrist. He turned the video camera on the moment he saw Han Lei. You, shocked, Han Lei reached to grab the comlink. Han Sen only moved slightly to make Han Lei fall again. Uncle, we can negotiate a price, and I can sell you this. Han Sen smiled and was about to pull him up again. Han Lei grinned and suddenly reached to twist Han Sen's hand, ready to break it and seize his comlink. Han Sen flipped his hand and held Han Lei's hand down, making him kneel on the floor and howl like a pig. Uncle, it seems that you have no intention to negotiate. I'll have to show it to my aunt then. Han Sen released Han Lei's hand and turned to leave. Wait, Han Lei quickly stopped Han Sen and gritted his teeth. 10,000. I'll give you 10,000, and you delete it. Han Sen turned away. 200,000, or I'll go to my aunt. Okay, said Han Lei, limping over to take hold of Han Sen. Thanks then, cash or bank transfer? Han Sen asked with a faint smile. Han Lei unwillingly transferred 200,000 to Han Sen. Well, now can you delete it? Of course I will delete it, but only when I'm in a good mood, Han Sen said and walked away. Brat, you lied to me. Han Lei became furious and raised his fist. However, he froze at the sight of Han Sen, as his nephew's movements had really left a strong impression. Uncle, I received your money so I will certainly delete it, but I did not say when I will do it. So you'd better keep me in a good mood. Han Sen patted Han Lei on the shoulder and stopped smiling. He whispered, also, do not let me see you in my home again, otherwise I will kill you. Han Lei shuddered, and for some reason, he knew Han Sen meant it. ****. The brat has become so evil, Han Lei cursed as Han Sen moved away. Ashamed that he was terrified by a boy, Han Lei was still nervous deep down and changed his mind about going to Han Sen's home. After sending Yan to school, Han Sen was in a great mood. On his way back, he saw a physical test center and went in, wanting to know his current physical fitness level. Crystal Ice web novel. Please like and subscribe for more updated novel.